lot of people think that the incorporation of some big name is their ticket to like the masses. But when the name is bigger than the brand, and there's a graveyard filled of examples like this, we can name thousands of them. It's not a real business because the market doesn't really need it. It's just being forced down the consumer's throat because...
And you might try it because of this celebrity
once
person.
or twice, but there's not a true need. It's not a true...
We've always looked at Truff as like the celebrity. And
It's
our
the
job
celebrity.
is to manage our brand as if it were the Justin Bieber and make sure it doesn't get too far on one side. We never wanted to have somebody that had more star power than our own brand.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Borelli, and you are tuned into the Sport of Business podcast. A few years ago, I started my business, Cuts Clothing, from my parents' basement in Washington. Leading a startup has its perks. One of them is connecting with like-minded individuals. On this podcast, you'll hear from some of the people I've gotten close with along the way. Get their takes on trends, business, and current events. And for future founders out there, hopefully you'll take something home that you can apply to your brand. This is the Sport of Business. Let's dive in. All right, welcome to episode 10 of For the Sport of Business podcast with the CEOs, co-CEOs of TRUFF, Nick Guillen and Nick Ajluni. How we doing?
What's going on, brother?
Good. We're real good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, stoked for you guys to be here. And a quick little background on this group here. Back in 2019, we were at the beach, and my buddy Jake, who was the first episode on the podcast, was like, hey, you got to meet these guys. They're similar stages, you guys, and I think you guys could kind of grow up together. And since 2019, I think I've been on more trips with these two guys than anything else. We've done Pebble twice, Cabo twice, Austin a couple times, and numerous trips to LA. And
Cabo coming up too.
Cabo coming
for
up
a third
for
time.
Yep.
big 3-0 birthday. And what I love about these guys the most is, they're in a completely different space, but they really, like that saying, iron sharpens iron has been so key. I can go to them and say, hey, what do you think about this situation? Or, they call me for something, and it's been such a fruitful relationship. So stoked to kind of wrap it out today. How you guys doing?
Good.
Real good. We're in time for like a week. Making the rounds, doing some work, and having some
This
fun.
is their second podcast of
the trip.
of the tour.
Yeah. We've been back to back for like a week.
A little
Not with
media tour.
podcasts, just with everything we're doing out here.
What and you're mainly out here just to kind of reconnect with the team?
We did that. We took everyone to the Angels game last night, our ops team.
Cool.
We had a couple like different meetings we had a board meeting. We had podcast. What else
Meeting
we
with
got?
manufacturers.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Whole gambit.
So I want to get started off, and I just love this story of how you guys got started with TRUFF.
Hit it. I think yesterday.
Yeah, he hit it a lot.
And we're sipping some 42.
We're sipping some 42.
With some boys to kind of loosen it up.
So TRUFF started, there's like when TRUFF started, and there's like what led us to TRUFF. So I guess we'll start with that.
Start from the beginning.
Yeah, start from the OG, where we met, which was in college. We had like mutual friends through my sister's friend group. And we were just like bonded through dabbling in business ventures. So we were like, had all these little projects throughout college, and we just like helped each other with them. And with those projects came like the marketing of those projects. And that's where we like really immersed ourselves in social media. And we watched as like the early days of Instagram became a platform for brands and whatnot. Mm-hmm. We like were taking notes mentally, like, oh, this is interesting. They're doing this good. They're doing that bad. Like a lot of it was like in the fitness space or whatever. And so we saw it kind of evolve. And one of the things that we kind of did, and Nick did a little more of, was like picking up OG account names, like handles.
That was the hack.
It's like the domain day names for the internet, but for Instagram. And he got Sauce on Instagram. We had just graduated college.
What year was that?
2015 in like August or July or something, like summer. And
Isn't that crazy that even then no one thought to just grab the handle?
there's a million,
crazy.
maybe someone had it before and it just fell off, or the account got deactivated. Who knows what happened, but he typed it in and he got it. and it was,
I remember sitting there at lunch. I was living in Long Beach, and I would just do this all the time, like typing in random shit, seeing what was available. And back then it would give you like a little red, either unavailable or green if it was available. And I like typed in sauce and it turned green. I hit save and I was like, what the fuck? What just happened? And I instantly hit him up. I was like, dude, I just got sauce on IG. This is
I was
crazy.
tripping too. I remember being like, what the fuck? Like, we just knew the value of that, you know? And then immediately the DMs just started flooding in of just because people saw that the account was like a thing. People were like trying to buy it. It was like a $20,000 offer off the bat.
Wow.
Anyway, so we took that account and we were like, what should we do with it? And we just started posting super cool stuff that we thought was saucy. Things that were like related to popular culture, things that were related to food.
That's great.
You know, like girls with food and, you know, rappers with food and cars and just things that were just like the hub of culture with a food twist to it. And we started to appeal to like this pop culture foodie in a way. And the account just started to like blow up. And we were growth hacking the shit out of it too. We were just like posting 5 times a day, all these tags, all these accounts we would like engage with. Like we were really doing a lot to make it a thing. And after a while we were like, this is crazy. Like, you know, what's next? And it was like, we should make a sauce for this account. And yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. It was like this kind of weird, like tail wag the dog thing. And then we looked at sauces. It's like, which route do you go? There's so many sauces. There's salad dressing, there's barbecue sauces, there's ketchups, there's this and there's that. And for us, like the no brainer was like hot sauce. Cause A, we loved hot sauce. B, it was like what we felt was the most culturally relevant sauce in the sauce category. Mm-hmm. You know, it was having that kind of like pop culture moment where Hoi Fong, which is like the sriracha with the green lid, they were like becoming cool on Instagram, and the elections were kind of going on, and Hillary Clinton was like, I got hot sauce in my purse just to try and be cool to like Beyonce said it. Mm-hmm. And we were like, this is like the future of sauce. And so we looked at the hot sauce category and like kind of dove deep in how we could stand out in that category. And we saw what was out there. We saw what wasn't out there. And typically the category was very older or craft brands that just were fighting for shelf space, cheaper prices, generic bottles, bad labels, no lifestyle, no digital infrastructure, and nothing was luxurious. Nothing was top shelf. And so we kind of came up with this idea to make like the Ciroc of hot sauce, which would have been like a lifestyle. We wanted it to be digitally native, luxurious, kind of top shelf sauce that was so cool that it could like sit in a music video. And we looked at high-end ingredients that could help us get there and be real luxurious, and we landed on truffle. So we spent like a couple years making a truffle hot sauce, basically, and we kind of built the brand around that concept.
That's amazing. I love how you guys built an audience first and then the business, and built the business into the brand positioning of that audience. I think a lot of people come out with an idea, but they're not thinking strategically of, is this actually in a brand positioning that I'm going to set the business up that could actually be successful. They just kind of bring the brand, they kind of launch a brand. They don't think of how it's going to position in the market, versus you guys, like you mentioned, you were going to come in with something that was luxurious, top shelf, that was going to stand out. It was crystal clear from the get-go, from the inception of the brand, of what the brand positioning was. And I really believe that's kind of the start of why you guys were able to kind of pick up speed.
Absolutely. And I think like the community building aspect and, you know, learning how to grow a following and put out content, you know, we didn't have a product to sell. So the value that we were giving to our community was really cool content, stuff that they thought was dope. Gave them a reason to follow the account. And then at the same time, you know, Nick talked about us spending 2 years developing the brand and the formula. And for us, you know, having a product with real integrity and something that was actually cool was extremely important to us. You know, growing our account, but also seeing these other brands that were growth hacking and creating these revenue generating machines weren't that focused on the community aspect. It was more of just trying to sell whatever commodity it was as quickly as possible and as much as they could. And for us, it was like, no, let's create a real community. Let's create a great brand with, you know, an amazing product, and let's just continue to, you know, improve on it every year.
That's amazing. And what was it? Well, let me take a step back. So once you guys got done with the name Truff, what was the next thing you did?
So in parallel, we kind of developed the first official recipe of what Truff original hot sauce was, alongside the brand positioning, developing the look and feel, the identity, how is the world going to perceive this? And that took about 2 years. And once
And that
we
was
had
2015 to 2017?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And for us, there was a lot of heavy lifting because we didn't just want to take off the shelf bottle and off the shelf cap, a label, and write Truff on it and say let's go.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to do everything that didn't make sense, so we went custom bottle, custom cap. Our label has gold foil on. It's like you've seen the bottle, so it's a lot different than what the typical path to market is. So for us, the 2 years of kind of sharpening the axe and creating a product that wasn't a minimum viable product, it was a product that was ready for the world to see.
Mm-hmm.
So when we did launch in 2017, we launched online. We went, heavy on IG. We had a group, some of our other founding members of a team, very, influential within pop culture. So we had a great seeding list to start, and we launched on, Instagram. And then from there, e-com, slowly got into paid media, influencers, one thing led to another, and it was just a snowball.
I love that. And you guys have been more or less bootstrapped since the beginning. I know you've had a few founders and a few partners initially, but more or less bootstrapped. What was the decision to just kind of focus on profits first and then growth? Like how did you deal with that before when starting?
The decision was to be responsible, like to be a responsible founder who's building an actual legit business versus like raise culture of like raise, burn, post your fundraise on LinkedIn and feel cool.
I hate that, right?
Burn, it's so annoying. And our premise was like, let's just be good founders. And like, not because it's just because, we're in it to build a good business. We weren't in it for the hype. And naturally you make decisions that lead to a good business. And we've been very scrappy. So like with our early marketing, it was like, it started off with us and like an iPhone and a shitty camera. And then it was like, really good content creators that we found that would do things for us for good prices. In Tangent, they were building their kind of portfolio of brands they've worked with. And we were like this pretty cool brand. And being very efficient with ad spend when we were growing the business digitally. And, only working with accounts that we know we'd sell well in, and not trying to land this big retailer just so we could be in it, but end up getting screwed because we didn't sell well there. Like we were just very like brick by brick. And I think when you make those decisions, you naturally build a brick by brick, step by step business that turns into something that's always going to be profitable because you're not faking growth. The product's actually legit. People actually want it. And, you're actually giving value to a market that is in turn, paying for the value. Like that's
totally
business 101. But I think with the raise and burn culture, people skip those steps and then,
And I always say sometimes when you raise too much, the market might actually be ready for it. So what I've seen is, you're overpaying for customers that actually don't really want the product yet. So then it hurts your LTV, your lifetime value of a customer because they're not coming back. And then you've burnt that money on something that is really just a sale today and not a sale tomorrow. We always focused on, if we're going to sell to someone, we want them to be a customer for life. And it doesn't always happen and the shirts don't fit, but we go into it with every initiative. Like this product's going to help us drive revenue more than anything from a repeat basis.
Play the long game.
Play the long game.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your guys' relationship and how you guys got started and why it's worked. Because co-CEOs don't always work. And what was the pathway to making each other work?
Yeah, it's always been a very like yin and yang type of relationship, I feel. I think one of the things that we always talk about is there's a great book called Ego's the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, which, is a book I think every founder should
so
read.
Good.
And for us, I think, a lot of the miscommunications or headbutting usually involves ego. And for us, it's always like, we're not in the business of knowing everything. We're in the business of finding the right answer. And we use each other to find the right answer, to bounce ideas off of each other, to get each other's feedback. There's a lot of things that he's extremely good at that I couldn't even do. And there's some stuff that I do that, he might
couldn't do.
not be able to do as well. And I think it's just finding the strengths of each other and leaning into those and knowing when, to ask for help and knowing when to realize that, hey, I'm not the guy to make this decision. You probably have better insight or more experience from past roles.
So how did you guys split up? Was there like, one takes operations, one take marketing, or how do you split up the responsibilities?
It's like a Venn diagram where the business has evolved since like day one. So early days was like heavy content, heavy media, heavy, more digitally focused. And like Nick's like a genius at that stuff. And like he had been like, he was growth hacking like Instagram accounts before we ever had @sauce. What was that account you had? It was like 30,000 followers, like early Instagram. Was it your personal?
My personal, but I had a bunch of like random.
Yeah, a bunch of accounts, all these OG names, like, and so he's like a master at that. And so he kind of led that. And he had this hat company before TRUFF, and like he built out this crazy good like customer service program where people were like evangelists for the brand just because the customer service was so good. And like he brought that in early days, which was like, I think the crux of how we kind of built our audience big time online, and like the digital people who really would like support TRUFF. And then kind of I like had some co-packing experience from another brand that I had kind of started in college. And then I guess where the Venn diagram comes in is where like things where neither of us know really well. And we're like, hey, what should we do here? And then we collaborate. And then like, as we've grown to like kind of macro level marketing, we both kind of get involved pretty heavy, like our billboard campaigns and like partnerships that we've done and collaborations. And so I think, now we have a pretty robust team to where both Nick and I focus on very high level stuff. But we've done a really good job of like not getting in each other's lanes, but at the same time, being super hands-on with each other to help in the respective lane, if that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. And I think when you start a business, it's so important that you develop lanes. For Cuts, it was kind of the same way. It was Carter was going to run all the finances, and I was going to run pretty much everything else, product and brand. And I always said, I'm going to push it as hard as possible, but it's your job to keep the lights on. So, there's all like, at some point in time, I had to, even though I was the owner of the business, I had to listen to him and say, hey, you got to slow down marketing spend. Like, don't do that. At the same time, I'm always going to push it. So the growth of the business, and we really respected each other. And it sounds like you guys just had such good level of respect for each other that if one of you was wrong or didn't necessarily know, you would be willing to say, hey, I think you take the lead on this.
Absolutely.
But we also, like, when we don't know something, we'll go to our other people who aren't us, who are on our team, or someone who is in the space that have done something that we are trying to learn to do. It's not just me and him collaborating, it's us collaborating with others where people have better insight than we do. And we're like, let's seek that answer out. And both of us know when the decision is beyond our wheelhouse. You know what I mean?
Totally. Very self-aware.
And we're very resourceful when we don't have an answer, but it's a like a left or right decision that could influence the business for years.
Totally. The CPG space is, I feel like, a hot space. Everyone wants to get in it right now. And, it seems like a lot of brands come and go. How have you guys had staying power, and how do you look about like growing a business in today's culture of CPG growth?
I think the timing of kind of when we launched TRUFF was in a very interesting time when, there was still a lot of juice from an e-com perspective. Mm-hmm. You could grow, a profitable e-com business. You didn't have to dump a ton of spend. You could still remain pretty efficient, but the positioning and our product also worked from an online perspective. It was a little bit heavy, but we kind of found a workaround. Our price point was one that allowed us to still remain profitable online from an e-commerce perspective.
Wow, that's great.
And we didn't jump into retail, as Nick mentioned, right away. So our whole strategy from the beginning, we were naive and stupid, was like, no, we're just going to grow like the biggest direct-to-consumer hot sauce brand. We're not going to go into retail. We're never going to go on Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. So we were just heads down building this direct-to-consumer e-com brand, and the land grab of what we did in such a short period of time. Not only we didn't have any competition in those early years, but the positioning and our price point allowed us to grow a lot quicker. Whereas, somebody that was maybe trying to compete with us selling a $5 or $6 sauce, just based on the metrics and the dollar amount and the average order value, they would have to burn a lot of money early on to, try to grow as quickly or at the same scale that we did.
The question was based on how we were able to stay in CPG.
Yeah, and maybe was there a different growth plan early on, like you mentioned?
So here's a crazy story. Want to hear a crazy story? When we modeled out this business, we were like, hey, this is how many bottles we can do in year one. I'm not going to say the number, but it was like a really big number. We were within 5,000 bottles of that number.
With a completely different plan.
But the way we got there was 180 from how we thought we were going to get there. But like the macro level plan was right. And has nothing to do with like staying in CPG, but it was like everything has been very thoughtful, starting from like what you mentioned earlier. You said that word positioning. That's like our Bible, that word. That is the most important word for us. Like when we look at brands that we want to invest in, or when we look at brands that we think are going to make it or are good to learn from, positioning. Like who are they in the category and why, and who are they against, and what's the angle they're taking, and how do they build the brand around that angle? And for us, it's TRUFF, which is signifies truffle in the hot sauce category, and we're luxurious, and like that was kind of our positioning with our packaging and our all that stuff. And I think a lot of brands are mispositioned or shouldn't even be. We always say this, like a lot of these businesses should never even have been started. They're an idea that someone was passionate about, but if you break down not just the unit economics, but the market and what you'll need to do to, if you're lucky, make it a thing, it makes no sense. And it's cool if it's a passion project thing, and maybe you can have $1 million business or a couple $1 million business, but to be a legit here to stay 10, 20, 50, 100-year brand more in consumer packaged goods, it's highly unlikely to do it strictly on passion. You have to be very thoughtful on what you're actually doing, and you have to be very aware that the likelihood of succeeding is slim, so you need to have everything working for you. And one of the things we had working for us that a lot of people didn't was @sauce, which was this growth hack, viral machine, which we knew that, and that was the premise in the first place.
Yeah, I think over the last 6 years, really from like 2015 to now, any idea could get funded, and there's all this money in the market, and it created these 9th, 10th, 11th brands. And you guys have seen it, probably copycat of yours that should never existed, that to Nick's point, were just copycat brands of the thing that was the market leader. And they a lot of them were able to pick up steam because interest rates were zero and businesses would get funded. But now with the quote unquote recession here, I think we always talk about it where we kind of like it because the brands that were thoughtful, they thought about brand positioning, and they really claim their space in the market are gonna be fine because they're the leader in the category. So I think what you just said is so powerful. I think a lot of people need to really be more methodical when they launch than just, hey, let's just put a brand on Shopify and go.
Yeah, the cream rises is kind of a thing that we always say, and I think over the years you could fake it for a little bit, but now when times are getting a little tough and the dollar isn't going as far as it used to, people are kind of getting caught with, their pants down or in tight positions where they need to really rethink the strategy. But in reality, they should have thought that strategy out from the beginning. And we always say like, one bold stroke, like, who you are amongst your competition, et cetera. But for us, there's a lot of brands out there that, they launch a product and next thing you know, they're launching something else before the market even knows about their first product. And it's like, okay, are you this brand? Are you this brand or this brand? So there's a lot of confusion. And I think you don't really get to understand your customer. Your customer doesn't really get to understand who you are as a brand because you're trying to do too many things in a very short period of time.
Totally. And what I think people forget, it's easy to launch a product in direct to consumer. And we've dealt with this and, we've made mistakes where maybe we come out with too many products, but as an online brand, you only have so much distribution. So if you use that distribution and you use it too widely, you're not going to stand for anything versus like Cuts. We started 4 years with just t-shirts and we allowed people to shop by cut. But, even now as we have more resources to create products, we're thinking like that. Do us as a brand have enough distribution to actually sell X, Y, or Z? And a lot of times the answer is no, we're still not big enough. How have you guys thought about kind of because you guys done it so methodically and had such success with your product expansion? Like, what's been the secret for that success?
The expansion?
Yeah.
You want me to rip?
Go ahead.
Expansion has been data-driven. It's been customer-driven, customer demand, online comments.
Sure, people asking, hey,
when are you going to do this?
pasta
When are you going to
sauce.
do that? And like we've seen them all, and we can't do everything. And one thing we always say is we modeled this business based off brands like Red Bull and Cholula and Coca-Cola, who had one hero SKU and only one SKU for decades, right? And we were like, we'll only ever be one hot sauce. But what we found as we kind of grew was there were certain areas that we could also bring the spice that we brought to hot sauce to those categories. And there was actual crazy demand, not only from those, like our second product was pasta sauce, right? And what we do is we bring truffle to we make amazing truffle things, right? Mm-hmm. And there was some untapped other categories. And the ones we're in now are pasta sauce, mayo, truffle oil.
Mayo is my personal favorite. I put mayo on everything.
It's good. It's very good.
Spicy mayo is fire.
It's fire. And those all things have been things that we knew they would kind of work before we launched them for a variety of reasons. Each one had their own kind of situation, but you know, for mayo, the buyer at a really massive chain that kind of sets the trend, which was Whole Foods, came to us and was like, hey, like we really want to have a truffle mayo on our shelf.
Amazing.
Would you like to make it? We want to launch it nationally. And we were like, you know, how do you pass that up? And it's just, we would only have passed it up if we couldn't have made an amazing mayo, but we went to work on making the absolute best truffle mayo we possibly could. Pasta sauce is a household staple. And think about how many times families eat pasta sauce. And it's like, we want to be there. And truffle oil, which we have this amazing truffle supply chain that we've built through amazing relationships and a lot of hard work and creative thinking and all these different things. And it's like, we were able to bring that into like this insanely high quality oil and, you know, offer it in this like amazing bottle and at a great price. And it's like, why not be there? And these are all things that have like retail data behind them, customer demand behind them. And we slowly but surely rolled them out in like very methodical ways. And then we had the content machine behind them too, which was, you know, great to get these out there quick. And so they weren't like, hey, we want to make a this and make a that. It was just like, hey, these all make extreme sense. Like we're foolish not to, kind of.
And did you have distribution set up with, like you mentioned, for it sounds like the spicy mayo, you had someone come to you and said, hey, we want you to make this. Was there any more risky bets you had to place that, you know, maybe like it was more of a gut feel that, or you heard from your customers, but maybe no orders out of the gate?
I think at this point we were in a good spot from a retail perspective. We had brought on our, you know, first big VP of sales who is just an absolute Navy SEAL when it comes to, you know, building out a retail business for condiments specifically. So I think for us, the risk wasn't necessarily, are we going to be able to get this into retailers? It was more of like hey, we're going in a new category. Like this can't fail. We have to go all in.
So you also requested it to them and kind of brainstormed like, hey, this is what we want to bring to the market.
In a sense. But kind of as Nick mentioned, I think looking at the categories, we wanted to make sure these categories were high velocity categories, household categories, high frequency, you know, types of purchases. We didn't want to come out with something that, you know, I think there might have been a couple times where retailer might have said, hey, you should do a truffle steak sauce or a truffle soy sauce. And you look at the data and it's like, okay, the average consumer buys half a bottle a year. It's like, what's that going to do for not only our business, but like we want to develop these deep relationships with our consumer where they're using our product on a day-to-day basis. We want to integrate our brand to the family and the household. So all of these things that we're doing, we're taking the same playbook that we created with hot sauce and we're disrupting all these other categories. Like when's the last time you saw a cool ad online for mayonnaise, right? When's the last time you saw a pasta sauce ad that was compelling and you're like, oh, this is cool, right? So we're just basically doing this in all of these categories in conjunction with these amazing retail partners at the same time.
Yeah, that I'm always blown away by your guys' just spice on, like, it really is innovative of it, putting, truff and all these other condiments. And then the way you do it, is so spicy, more or less, or you literally bring the sauce to the market. What do you guys do? Like, how do you guys, like, me and you talk about it. We text each other all the time. Hey, I'm up at 6. Me and you went on a 7-mile run this morning.
Cap.
Nick was sleeping. He was running room service.
Cap.
Like, you got a ice machine at your house.
Cold plunge.
You're doing a bunch of walks.
Let's be clear. I'll fucking work out
Yeah.
and run too.
He's
I walk
running,
at
he's
night
working
to
out.
listen to a
He's talking
podcast. Yeah.
But everyone is always trying to find like the next hack, but it's more of a lifestyle. What about your lifestyle of being a CEO that you've helped you kind of maintain, good mental health with a crazy schedule?
For me, I think working out's been the biggest one. Working out, getting outside, reading, knowing when like you're kind of overheating a little bit, and being okay to like, take a break, going on a walk in the middle of the day at lunchtime, or, you mentioned doing things that allow you to get, endorphin rushes, like cold plunge or sauna, or things that give you dopamine hits in a very positive way. Because, running a business, like, it's literally like this. It's like the highs are high, the lows are low, and you want to try to balance it out. And I think finding the balance, whether it's, through good relationships, having good friends that are going through the same stuff, being active, getting out there, sweating, getting a good release, going to therapy, meditating, whatever it might be, just finding whatever works for you and sticking to that.
Mm-hmm. Nick, you go on a lot of walks. Why is that so good for you?
I do walks just for general fitness. I usually like walk a mile, run a mile, walk a mile. And then it's like basic lifting weights. And then one thing we got really early on was like saunaing, like years ago. I had like a sauna in my apartment 5 years ago, like plugged into the wall. It's just like fresh air. There's science between like the right-left connection between walking right-left. It's good for just like, I like to do the 10,000 steps thing just because it keeps you active. And if you never skip it, you're always active. Mm-hmm. And then throwing in a podcast or a book, or like being on the phone, we're always on the phone, or whoever, and just talking and, enjoying nature and whatnot. It's just like a very good, I think, grounding practice that when you do it over a long period of time, you realize like how good the last few months were, mentally, versus just like if you don't do it and like having all these like roller coasters like Nick mentioned. And then other things like, going out, like having a drink every once in a while, like going out to dinner, hanging out, like dates and whatnot. Like, it's just like staying active and just like not the early years of our business, at least, we didn't have time to live at all. And we also didn't have money to live. So we just kind of like were stuck in our apartments. Even on the weekends, we'd be filling orders and like boxing up things and there was our Sunday from like 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. was our window of the week where he would go home because we were living together, and then we would just kind of regroup and then hit it again. And it was like that for a couple of years.
Wow.
And then it was like that for 3 years before that, getting to the launch. And so we kind of woke up one day, we were like, hey, we can like go out to dinner on a Saturday. That's crazy. And I think ever since we started to do that, and that's been like 3 years of that probably, we've slowly just been like better people. I feel like that's like the startup grind no one really like sees.
Yeah, I moved home. It sounds like you guys lived close to home and just kind of
home.
You lived at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that like you're living at home is such a good tool to start a business because your burn rate's low. You're not worried about your next paycheck necessarily. And then you get your time back. And because you can work on the business and without having to have a crazy demanding job. And I'm such a proponent of that without that, there's no cut success. And I really enjoyed it too. That's when I really got to like, sometimes I always say it's hard to be in a big city and look at all the tall buildings when you're starting, because it feels so like, how can I get to these tall buildings as like a metaphor, versus like when Wenatchee didn't have any tall buildings to look at where I was from. So it was like, I could really dream and think big without being like scared of it at the same time. So if you can get out of that, like literally seeing big city and traffic and just get space to think, that's when you might be at your best to kind of lay the ground for it and have success.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of value in kind of like, burning the boat, quitting your job, moving home with your parents, putting yourself in a position where your back is against the wall, where the only opportunity you have is to go all in on yourself. And I think like a lot of people are intimidated to make that leap, but I think that leap teaches you a lot about who you are as a person. It puts you in a position that's very uncomfortable, and you find a way to make it work one way or another.
Was there a moment, now kind of getting more aspirational, like you guys were like, damn, like we made it in a small way, something you were really kind of shocked that happened and kind of put you guys on the map?
I think there were a few. I think there's a few. I think one of the big ones where we both like, it was like hard to even like, we were like, what just happened? Was like meeting Oprah.
Yeah, that's cool.
We were like, what the fuck just happened? What was that? What? It was so quick, and it was so like, she like surprised us on this Oprah's Favorite Thing segment in front of all these cameras, and we just like talked for a few minutes, and it was like, we kind of left like, did we just, what? It was just so confusing, and we were like, damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, that is a big
There's a bunch of other things. I mean, you probably have a bunch.
Yeah. I mean, I think like for us, it's been hard to kind of like stop and smell the roses. But I think now looking back, we do recognize all of the crazy, cool, amazing shit, us and our team have accomplished in 5 years. But there were a couple like, we had a pretty crazy goal, like our first year, and we like 3x'd our goal. And after year one, we were like, holy shit, like that was pretty crazy. And then it's like, okay, let's go bigger next year. Right. And then Nick mentioned we got picked up on Oprah's Favorite Things. And that's like the largest gift guide the world has ever seen. And to be a brand and to be on the list is amazing. But to be a brand that launched 1 year ago, that's digitally native, that's being launched on a gift guide that's extremely giftable.
Yeah.
It's like,
And then being we were in the top
yeah.
5 out of 100 brands in terms of sales in that list. And then I think the biggest thing that I think the most my phone has ever kind of blown up was like, I mean, 2 main things were like crazy. Monday Night Football. They made this graphic of like a Thanksgiving feast, and they used Truff as the bottle, and they put MNF on it for Monday Night Football. And then when we did our kind of Taco Bell partnership,
that's badass.
Like my like phone broke because of like how much like shit was coming in. It was just like a crazy time to see like how relevant we were in culture and how wide the umbrella was of people seeing like the attention on our brand was like insane. And we have a couple crazy things coming up soon that.
Can we tease any of them?
No.
We'll just be looking out for Truff. I think the underlying reason why those aha or big moments can happen is when you just set high expectations for yourself. I don't think those happen like your sales. You had big goals and you were really pushing it without really having that high expectation. A lot of times those things can't happen. I'm always telling the team, no, whether it's TikToks per day or, new initiatives, like we got to have high expectations for them for it to be successful.
To your point, like I'll say, and I think I can speak for both of us, we've never been surprised. I've never been like, wow, I'm surprised this happened. This was always like the plan for this brand.
Always the plan from day one.
Yes, it was always the plan, but there's some moments that are like surreal, and those are a few of them, but we're not surprised. And that's just a testament to like kind of how many years we've put into making this a thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
What, has there been any decisions you've been like, man, I really blew that one? Like what was the biggest learning experience you have with Truff so far?
Well, our first run, we scrapped the whole thing. We, had our first recipe that we took from the bench, and we had some people review it.
You did production with it?
We did production,
Wow.
and it came out not as we had imagined. And at that moment,
Came out like this.
yeah, it was like water. And we were like, is it really that bad? Can we launch with this? And then we're like, all right, let's
You
just
start convincing yourself.
Yeah.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, it's not that bad. And then we're just like, okay, let's take the L. Let's scrap the whole thing. Let's do it right. So I think we like adjusted our launch date based on that. But, a couple things along the way that are learning curves.
I think the there was like this early hire we had that was helping us in the warehouse, and he ended up like stealing from us. We were pretty annoyed with that guy. And then I think trusting certain people who hadn't done this or done anything close, but giving us advice, things like that. But for the most part, I think we've, knock on wood, avoided like
catastrophic
this is catastrophes.
This is fake wood, but
yeah. And then I think, certain partners we had worked with, like supply chain partners, some have not always delivered, which is frustrating, but, doing our best to, like, there was a couple of deals that we spent, like marketing things that, like, there's one that I spent maybe 8 months on, and it was a lot of time, and then people ended up being just scum, and we just walked away, and it was like, I can't believe we wasted that much time on it. Things like that, but those are, you live and you learn things.
But I think where I learned the most, because we've that happens before. We've done production with people that just straight up half the units didn't show up, and they just scummed us essentially. Yeah. And I think where they scummed us,
Like, okay.
Or people said, hey, this is gonna be a huge impact, and it doesn't happen. And I like when those happen, I always come back and like, that's just developing my gut.
Yes.
Like, because a lot of times in the beginning you realize, or you can look back and there's this little sliver of, hey, Steven, this isn't going to work out. But you get convinced
yourself.
of it.
Yeah.
And then when it doesn't work out, you're like, I need to trust that gut. And so over the years now, we just actually had a situation like that, and I don't want to get into details, but I was like, no, we're not doing that. That's gonna be horrible. And then it turns out, as like the leave got uncovered, like it would have been a nightmare for us. And I think if those prior things wouldn't have happened on a small scale, because when you're starting a business, like those mistakes are tiny. So it's actually good to take a lot of L's in the beginning, because like if you make that same mistake 6 years later, I mean, it could put you under. It could be millions of dollars worth of product you can't sell. So I think not being afraid to commit L's in the beginning, just to know you really got to learn from them.
Absolutely.
There's like this, I don't know the words in Latin, but there's a Latin saying, I don't know what they are, the words, but what it basically says is find out for yourself.
That's great advice.
And it's like, don't trust people. When our biggest thing is when someone says, I've been doing this for 30 years, we say, okay, cool. Cap. We're not working with you because
no one's challenged anything you've done for 30 years.
If that's how you've been doing it for 30 years, you're not that smart, because you should have changed it 5 times since, or maybe 50 times.
Wait, say that saying again.
It says, I don't know the Latin words, but it's find out for yourself. And it means like, I don't care what people are saying, who's telling you, what makes, like, ask the question yourself. Go do your own homework on X situation, and what you'll find, and it doesn't matter how straightforward something seems, dig deeper, dig a little deeper. Ask that one more question. How come that? How come that? Why that? Why that?
So good.
What would you do? What if we did it this way? What's the wrong thing about doing it that way? And what you'll usually find, and what we found over the years, is finding out for ourselves. We take a completely different approach, because the information we have available to make the decision is so much more, there's so much more context to it. And the reason things get stuck in kind of delayed patterns is because people stop questioning things and they just keep doing what they've always done.
Yeah. And what they've gone through isn't what you guys through. There's so many factors, like the time, like, in the 80s, it might not work, but it's 20 or it's 30 years later, or like the way, like that one specific partner. I mean, there's a million things, and I'm going to steal that.
It's so good. Do you remember that Elon book, Space something? Mm-hmm. So in our early days, pre-launch, we read this book. Do you remember the name of it?
I have it on my
Tesla, SpaceX, in the Pursuit of Something. It's like it's a biography on Elon Musk, not an autobiography, but a biography. And it talks about how every single aspect of like creating Tesla, it was like, oh, this part, it's $85,000 for this part. Cool. Bring it back to me in 6 months when it's $850. And they're like, and he's like, that's it. That's your job. Find a way. And like, sure enough, they figured out a way. And it's like, there's this like kind of fabricated world where this is how things are. And then there's like the questioning world where you kind of like dissolve that into a new world.
And that's really the goal. That's really what the role of our jobs are, to push that for our businesses.
Exactly.
Like that's what a CEO is paid to do. You're not always doing the little details, but you're making those calls to be the most curious people in your business.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where I always try to start and end the day of curiosity and saying, is that the way we should do it? Or,
Right.
Is this just what you heard from the guy to your left or your right or whatever? Man, I love that. My sister, one time when I started the business, I was like, I'm going to call it Cuts. And she was like, it sounds like a barbecue company or a haircut company. And I was like, no, you don't see the vision. And I think that was my first little sliver of a lesson of, in other people's mind, they can't visualize it or see it the way I can. So don't let anyone else come between you and your vision, because that's your vision.
Remember our name, Truff?
Yeah. So same thing. Like, we were working with people that were, a little bit more experienced, especially in like the luxury space. And for them, it wasn't just about something that was very simple. And it was like, it had to be a little bit more fancy or a little bit more this and that. And for us, it was just like, like one bold stroke. Right. And for us, our gut was like Truff. It needs to be called Truff. And we ended up making that decision. And, it could have been named
I love
whatever.
It's a no-brainer.
No, we were like heavily advised not to name it Truff.
Yeah.
And we like fought
and
tooth
we don't
and
have
nail.
to say their name, but big players in the game.
Yeah, big like smart
OGs.
people.
OGs.
People that had success, and no one understood what we were doing like we did and how we wanted to approach the category. And we also got so lucky. Nick had known a girl who her mom was a professional namer. So big companies like Target and Walmart would go to her and say, hey, we want to create this brand. And they were multi-six-figure projects for these, and they would come up with names for what they want based on psychology and trademark availability and all these things.
The whole like science.
The whole thing. And we, snagged a call with her and we're like, what do you think of this name? And, she did it for free, our call, but she's like, I love it.
And that was just a little vote of confidence you need to give the middle finger to these big dogs.
Yeah.
Yes. But we and that's an example of not
great.
knowing something and like seeking, like
That's gold.
Seeking, and we just got lucky that you happen to know that girl or whatever.
Yeah.
But
that might have been like to the question of what
Difference
was one
of-
thing that could have, been the biggest difference.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that one call.
Name your name and your position of, how the world sees you. It's like,
largely everything. And
It's everything.
so the other thing is this. So the way we see it is like building a business is like you're walking up a vertical line, and your job as like the founder and like the creator of that category or that whatever market you're in is to like make that line more and more flat so it's an easier walk. And one of the things that
Love that.
you do is you set things up in a way that require minimum education, because education is expensive. And when you can articulate what you're doing through your name, like Cuts, which is brilliant, the cuts of a t-shirt, it's like people understand what, like they get it quickly, and you don't have to educate. And when you don't have to educate, you don't have to raise, because you don't have to spend money on education.
Yeah, that's very well articulated, however you say it. You guys also you guys kind of been getting in an investing world. How do you look at like all the decks that come through? We all get like a couple a week now. If someone's watching and they're just getting started out and they're kind of going through that phase, how do you analyze a certain new company that is like, hey, I want you guys on my board?
first, I think it's like, okay, who are the founders? Who are these people? Are they people that are going to really go in all in like we did? And we kind of put ourselves like in the position of how can we invest into companies that have founders like us or like you?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of like step one. And then step two is, okay, what's the product? What's the brand? What category or whatever are they attacking? Do we see the opportunity? Can this thing scale? Can this be, $100 million revenue brand? Do they want to exit it? Do they just want to build a profitable company? What do the unit economics look like? Can you scale this thing online? Is there a retail, model? Is the brand's formula and recipe set up to be successful in the natural channel? Can it start at Whole Foods? Can we, basically create the same playbook or use the same playbook that we built for our brand? And there's also the completely other, different way to look at it. Like, not all brands are going to have the same playbook that we had. So can we understand if their vision has viability from a retail perspective? Okay, maybe their ingredients aren't going to fit in Whole Foods, but maybe they can be in Walmart, right? Maybe they can crush Walmart. Maybe they can crush conventional. Is this brand going to need a ton of funding? Is it frozen? There's so many different aspects that require so much capital that I think a lot of founders don't realize early on.
Totally. And that can make or break you.
Yeah. And for us, it's like we've gone through it. We've bootstrapped our business to a certain extent, and we can kind of like see 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road of what hurdles they would come into before even starting the company.
You know, it's funny. When we first met right after that beach day, one of our buddies sold our company, and like really the first time we got to sit down and hang out was on that PJ, and you told, and we were all excited, getting on it, and it was cool. And that's when because I'm ultra competitive. So even though Jake was like, these guys are cool, I was like, yeah, let me see. I was like, I knew Cuts was on the rise, and we're coming after it, but I was like, kind of like waiting to see if I could, for myself, see if you guys were legit. And I remember on that plane ride, we were talking about another business that I invested into, and you kind of said that, and I was like, all right, yeah, these guys are legit. I should, take their advice or opinion strongly and actually listen to them. So I don't know if you ever knew that, but you said that exactly what you mentioned on that ride, and I was like, all right, I fuck with these guys. These guys are the real deal.
Totally. Yeah, I think intuition is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Also, like the valuation you're investing at, because if you're looking at it on a bigger picture, it's like if you're in at X amount, like it's gonna be harder for you to lose that money. But then you look at like the time, and can you actually? We like to invest in things that we could help, that we can add value to, and that we have a network that could put firepower to it. Because there's this fallacy that like there's one investor or one VC that's going to like blow your business up and do everything for you. And that just doesn't exist. And what we found is all of our greatest real wins that actually helped our business were just like individuals that added value on the fly.
Yeah.
And we like to be those people for brands we get involved with because, A, to make our investment do well, but B, because that's what we say we're going to do when we invest, and we're true to our word. And that part is like intuition. Like, do we have the ability to actually influence this? And we've invested in some things together, and some things it's like they're not our space, but just like having our brand associated, or our names associated with them, is value for our industry. And so there's things like that too that we think makes sense.
I think the stroke of genius, what you said, what I want to reiterate is there's not going to be one person or one thing that makes your brand. So never hold any one relationship with too much value.
Yes.
I think that's so important, a lesson that, I thought, when Patrick Mahomes would wear our stuff, boom, our sales would go crazy. And yeah, that was a good block for us to have.
Right.
There isn't one thing that's going to make or break our brand. It's a series of daily chips that ultimately lead to you success.
For sure.
And I think that's where a lot of people can put too much weight into something where like, hey, we get X celebrity investor and boom, our sales are there, and it doesn't happen. You get your hopes down and you waste a lot of time like banking on that, so to speak. And I think that was such a good insight you said there.
And see, to that point, early on, we were thinking of, giving pieces of equity away to like up and coming hot chefs, right? And as we've started to work with chefs, we've built, amazing relationships with so many different people. But as you mentioned, it doesn't carry as much weight as you think it does but you don't know that until you actually start working with them. It's not going to change your business by, being partnered with, so-and-so. If he's not really going all in on it the same way we're going all in on it.
Mm-hmm. And on that note, you never want your brand to be reliant on a celebrity. Like
Totally.
The days of like 50 Cent and vitamin water are gone.
Yeah. Even Kim K and Spanx, Skims, I recently heard they're trying to like almost shift away from that because there's only so much distribution one person can have.
Right.
So it can be a great head start, but it's not going to be
it's a growth hack, right?
brand.
Like McGregor with Proper 12. Mm-hmm. Like obviously they're synonymous. One could not exist. Like Proper 12 could not exist without McGregor. It couldn't have blitzed the market like it did. These are outliers, rare, not not the norm. And a lot of people think that the incorporation of some big name is their ticket to like the masses. But when the name is bigger than the brand, and there's a graveyard filled of examples like this, we can name thousands of them, literally thousands. It's not a real business because the market doesn't really need it. It's just being forced down the consumer's throat because.
And you might try it because of this celebrity
once
person.
or twice, but there's not a true need. It's not a true, it's like building a quick house versus like a brick mansion on a cliff that can withstand time. Like they're not actually doing that. They're using an audience to like kind of be cool, and then it fizzles away.
Yeah.
So,
we've always looked at Truff as like the celebrity, and
It's
our
the
job
celebrity.
is to manage our brand as if it were the Justin Bieber and make sure it doesn't get too far on one side. We never wanted to have somebody that had more star power than our own brand in the light.
that's so true.
So we're like managers of a celebrity.
Early on, we wanted to do this deal with the influencer, and I think it was such a good blessing that we didn't, because we would have been known for the so-and-so's brand. And I think, like you mentioned, like bringing cuts to the rise long term. I mean, it would we would have been pigeonholed as an athlete brand or this, and when we're so much different than that, and we got to create our own brand because of it.
Totally.
Now, let's get into a little bit of fun stuff. I call it cap or no cap.
we play this game every day.
That's all we do.
So this is I got excited about this section of the podcast. It's something new. We've never done it before. It's called After Hours. So
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to after hours.
Cheers to After
It's
Hours.
the fun stuff right here.
So as a founder, I think a lot of times you see so much cap in the market, and cap, we use cap like bullshit. Yeah. Like there's no way that this could work. And I think it's funny when I call these guys, because they usually say the exact same thing. We're like, yeah, that's cap. So the first thing I wanted is agencies at large. Why do we often say they're cap?
I think there's been a pattern in, maybe the e-com digital space, maybe from like a performance marketing perspective. A lot of agencies, they kind of have these turn and burn type of habits.
Mm-hmm.
They sell you the world. They tell you they're going to do all these things. They're going to, cut your cost in half. They're going to scale your brand. They're going to make you tons of money, et cetera, et cetera. Next thing you know, you start working with them. Things are, off to a decent start, and then it starts to fizzle out a little bit. Next thing you know, you're in the position you don't want to be in, and then you're looking for another agency, and then they keep doing that over and over and over and over and over again. I think it's easier from a founder perspective to go hire an agency than to try to hire your own talent in-house. So I think from a founder's perspective, they might not know what they need. They might not know how to hire the right people. They don't know what to look for. So they go to these agencies that are the subject matter experts. And, if you don't know something about something and someone's telling you all this stuff, it's like most of the time you're just going to kind of lean into it. If you don't have the
and then you end up spending so much money.
Yeah.
It's so expensive for agencies nowadays.
The issue isn't the agency, and the issue isn't the founder. It's the people funding the founder. Because this founder should, if you're a founder, you're like, I want to do this. Oh, give it to that agency. You've done zero homework, zero diligence. You've put zero effort out, zero time, zero energy into learning what you're trying to do. You're lazy. You're not actually executing what you're not breathing and living it. You're cap. You're a fake founder. You're a tweeter, not a founder. You know what I mean? And it's like, in doing so, it's likely that a weak founder is going to go to an agency because they don't know what they don't know, and they don't care to learn. And, we're lucky that he had such a good digital background, and a couple of our friends that we had met in college and, helped us kind of on like the ad buying front and just like being our subject matter experts. But that doesn't cost $30,000 a month with an agency. Yeah. What it costs is mental energy and effort. And totally. The reason a lot of these agencies get to exist is because the founders get to exist because whoever funded them had access to good money, and they themselves have, it's just down the food chain. And agencies, we compare them to like a mechanic. Like you don't really know what you need, and they just tell you, like, you don't know how your car engine works. They just say, this is broken, that's broken, we'll fix it, it's this much. And they're like, yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll get you this much on your money, you're good, don't worry about it. And it's like
Cap. I ran our Facebook ads till about 10 million in sales. And I think then when we were to hire it in-house and do all that, it was easy for us to be like, you know, me to be like, okay, one, it's not worth some. I mean, some of these agencies are charging like $100,000 a month minimum.
Yeah,
you're not going to be able to run a profitable business that way. And it's kind of just a sign of the times that could actually be a viable business model when there's all this funding around.
Well, all those guys in LA that were running all these kind of supplement brands and all these, like, they're all gone. They don't speak anymore. They're not on Instagram. They're not on Twitter. They're just fizzled away because there was a time where you could spend money and get a lot of money back, and they were charging 15% on ad spend, 20% on ad spend, be making millions of dollars a year, millions just on other brands who didn't know. But everyone got paid along the way, so the brand didn't question it, the employees didn't question it, no one questioned it because the money was there. And then when that all went away, they all went away. And it's like, it's so quiet now. It's so weird.
I love it. I think this like recession, quote unquote, if it is or isn't, I think it's,
and the Apple
it's
update,
so good.
right?
Yeah, the Apple update.
Yeah,
that really made it hard to retarget. And if you're listening, you don't understand the Apple update. Apple, I think was it February of 21 or March or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. iOS 14.
They pretty much got rid of the signal to teach you what the consumer was doing post clicking on your ad. So it was really hard. Like before, you could really get in the nitty gritty. Okay, someone was clicking on a blue shirt that visited all these other sites, and that cookie stayed with them. So then you could retarget based on what all of their interests were post leaving your site or before in some cases. And now without that, it made it much less effective to do digital ads. This is probably a little bit more harder to say cap or no cap, but like, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but like overfunding. Why do we always say that's like so cap?
When you're overfunded, you're not on earth. Your value to the dollar is completely skewed. You start to overpay for things. You start to, throw money at the wall and see what sticks. For us, it was like we still operate a business as if we don't have money. And, it's just a scrappy mentality. I think a lot of businesses out there, they want to kind of buy their way through crossing that chasm, and they're not really creating a real business. They're just spending, money's coming in. No one asks questions when money's coming in, right? When the checks are coming in, no one's asking questions. But when an iOS update happens or a recession happens, next thing you know, the bank account starts to get a little tight. And then what happens? Got to raise again. And all of those bad habits that you accumulated, spending all of that money, they're still with you. So it's just a downward spiral.
And you can always tell, I don't know how to ask this in a cap or no cap, but you can always tell the founders that are like kind of cap. Like, they're on vacation all the time.
Oh my God.
We can call it the LA founder is so cap, and the real ones like us can spot it.
Because they're not in it for the thing they're building. They're in it to be a founder and to have the personal brand. People spend 80% of their time on their personal brand, 20% of the time on their business. Cap.
Yeah.
Fuck out of here.
Yeah, it's so funny. And that's why I love hanging with you guys, because it's just like, we don't let anyone in our circle that's cappy like that.
Yeah. That's funny.
Awesome. Well, was there any other cap or no caps you would want to throw some shade at?
No.
We'll leave we left the direct names out of it.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've been here for an hour, but I appreciate you guys coming on the Sport of Business podcast. If you guys are out there, check out some TRUFF sauce. It's some of my favorites, especially the mayo and the pasta sauce. My fiance loves the pasta sauce. We cook it probably every other week, at least, in the mayo whenever I have sandwiches. I love it. So check these guys out. They're going to be one of the biggest brands in the world one day. I have no doubts. So take a look at and follow them, and get inspired and keep going.
Thanks for having us, brother.
Love it. Thanks for having us.
And congrats on everything you're doing.
Yeah.
It's inspiring to have homies in the circle like you.
Yeah, it's hard to find like real ones, and like I love
We
it.
out here.
We out
We out
here.
here.
We out here. It was cool. Like, not that I do things for approval, but the same people that were like when I moved to LA, I felt like the small town kid with the LA with the USC kids. Even that was like in my head. I don't know if it actually was a real happening, but like they would be like, "Oh, you're starting a t-shirt brand. Good luck." And now those same kids are like trying to come to our Super Bowl party, waiting outside. And
Oh
I'm
wait,
like,
if we're adding one more cap or no cap, if we're still recording,
Yeah,
we are. It's the good schools that people say, oh, I went here.
San Diego State and Cal State
State
Fullerton,
Fullerton.
baby,
Let's
let's
go.
go.
It's the I went here's, and
Yeah.
it's like
The I went here.
what? It's just like it's cap.
Yeah. Yeah. You can just you can feel the entitlement like coming
It's
out of
entitlement. We hate it. And one of the things that it's also been frustrating over the years since we're sipping
I love
is
it.
when like, funds will hit you up. They want to get involved with your business. And who's on the phone? Some like entry level analyst who went
That's
to
my
some good
pet
school,
peeve.
who grew up around extreme wealth. That's like asking you questions about your business and telling you what you need to do. And I'm like, you
hate that.
haven't done this. You don't know what we're talking about. You don't know anything we're talking about. Why are you telling us? And like, why are we even on the phone?
I recently told a friend, I was like, hey, like you can call me, but don't send this kid my way again.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
It's
It's disrespectful.
Yeah, it's disrespectful, and they don't care about all they care about is trying to make money off what you're doing, and people should be wary that they should protect what they're building and not let anyone in that couldn't do it themselves. Because these people who are trying to get in, they could never do it themselves. That's why they're not doing it themselves.
And that's like the old school, like my dad was very much like that. Like he wouldn't share his ideas with people. And like, I feel like that's kind of how I am now. Like I'm very, I'm very careful who I let in my inner circle.
Big time.
And I always tell the team, we got to fight for our brand positioning, and every day it's got to come in because there's a fight out there. Like you got to feel that way when you're in the door, and if you're not ready to like come in and fight, and I'm always like bring the energy because there's people coming after us,
Right.
Whether it's like investors trying to or brands, yeah,
And like copycat brands too. Like how many truffle hot sauces have come out and tried to mooch off our stuff?
Even big retailers.
Yeah.
Try to,
Trader Joe's.
yeah. I saw the Trader
Trader
Joe's.
Joe's truffle hot sauce.
they'll drop something.
But they don't have that. They don't have Truff.
And the
They don't-
customers
they
know.
can't
They'll
copy
even
it.
say it's not Truff is what they say.
And they know that, but it's just like the leech mentality of just like trying to make a buck off of, what you're doing.
I coined it the barnacle brands. If
Barnacle
you look up
brands.
brands,
I love that.
It's a
It's
barnacle.
literally a barnacle
It's just
stuck
sucking and just this annoying zit on your side. And you're
Yes.
like, the barnacle brands.
Get out.
They're just like sucking, trying to get the crabs, just trying to hold
Yes,
on. And you just
anything.
gotta
Knock
nip
it
them
off.
off.
Yeah.
But you got to be careful because a lot of those can sink your ship.
Yeah.
Barnacles
Yeah,
they would have to
Right.
scrape them off because when people were coming from Europe in the early days, like barnacles would sink shrimps and they'd be like, how is it happening? It was just all these leeches sucking on. So you gotta rid yourself of the barnacle brands.
100%.
I like that.
Let's
End
end
it
it
on
with
that.
that.
Boom.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. That was dope.